Hi, boys and girls. It's Miss Chase again. So, we're going to continue a little work for our reading assignment this week. So, I know that at the end of the week, I'm going to be expected to have a written response in my RCC book on page 262. Okay. And I'm recalling that to write that response, I need to be reading 3 different passages and comparing them in some way. So before I go ahead and read the next passage to you, I just want to remember what some of those things are that I should be looking for as I'm reading. So I'm remembering that I need to compare the passages and look for similarities and differences. That I need to compare the text structure. So how the text is set up, okay? Is it like an essay? Is it a letter? Okay? Those types of things. I'm also thinking about the point of view of the author. So, where is the author coming from? Was the author actually there? Did they just hear about it? Did they research about it? Okay, what is their point of view? And the last bullet in that prompt was to remember key details from the text. Okay, so since I'm going to be comparing, I want to also be mindful of the passage that we already read. Right? So we already read Boston Tea Party Eyewitness Account by Joshua Wythe. Today, I want you to open up to page 253. And we're going to read Boston Tea Party Eyewitness Account, John Andrews. Oh, as I'm saying that, I'm realizing I already noticed a similarity right there. These have pretty much the same exact title, but they just have a different gentleman's name. So I wonder how that similarity is going to affect the passage. So let's start up here because I don't want to skip anything that might be important. So up there on the top it says, John Andrews was an eyewitness to the Boston Tea Party. In a letter to a friend written just after the incident, he described what he witnessed. Wow, that actually tells me a lot. Because it tells me that he was an eyewitness. I know a witness means someone who watched something happen, okay? I remember Joshua Wythe was a 16-year-old boy who was a participant, right? So he was actually involved in the Boston Tea Party itself. He was on the ship throwing the tea overboard, right? It seems like this guy, John Andrews, maybe just saw it happen. The other thing that this tells me that's pretty important is that he wrote this in a letter, okay? So that tells me something about the text structure of this passage, okay? So I already read you the title, so I'm going to jump in here at paragraph 1. Please be following along with your eyes and not just listening to me because you'll get much more out of it if you're following the text as I'm reading it. Remember how I always say, you can't be reading if you're not looking at words, right? Okay. The meeting house was so crowded that I could get no further than the porch. The moderator was just declaring the meeting to be over. That caused another general shout outdoors and in, and 3 cheers. What with that and the consequent noise of breaking up the meeting, you'd have thought the inhabitants of the infernal regions had broke loose. So a strategy I can use is I see that it has a little number here, right? It has a little 1. That means that I can look to the bottom and see what that word means, okay? So inhabitant means people who live in a certain area. And then it also had a number by infernal. Infernal means awful, related to the mythical world of the dead. Okay, so I'm just going to reread that sentence. What with that and the consequent noise of breaking up the meeting, you'd have thought the inhabitants of the infernal regions had broke loose. Wow, so it sounds to me like they're saying it's really loud and crazy and things are kind of getting a little out of hand. For my part, I went contently home and finished my tea. I was soon informed what was going forward. Not believing it without seeing it for myself, I went and was satisfied. On paragraph 2 now. They gathered, I'm told, upon Fort Hill to the number of about 200. They then proceeded 2 by 2 to the Griffin's wharf, where the ships captained by Hall, Bruce, and Coffin lay. Captain Coffin's ship was freighted with a large quantity of other goods. So freighted, it was carrying all those goods. They took the greatest care not to injure those in the least. Before 9 o'clock in the evening, every chest on board the 3 vessels was knocked to pieces and flung over the sides. I'm remembering something pretty similar from the other passage we read that made me picture that in my mind too. All this tea being flung over the side of the boat. I'm now on page 254. We're here, paragraph 3. They say the actors were Indians from Narragansett. To an observer, they appeared as such, being clothed in blankets, with their heads covered and copper-colored faces. They were each armed with a hatchet or axe, or a pair of pistols, and their jargon was unintelligible to all but themselves. So I noticed that has some vocabulary down at the bottom. I can also share with you that jargon is like a language that can't really be understood. Jargon can sometimes be slang language, not really proper English or proper language, whichever one. So their language was unintelligible. You couldn't understand it. Not the least insult was offered to any person save one, Captain Connor. He had ripped up the lining of his coat and waistcoat under the arms and had nearly filled them with tea. When discovered, he was handled pretty roughly. So this one captain was rebelling against everyone throwing the tea overboard. He wanted to save some of the tea, so he was wrapping it all up in his clothes. They not only stripped him of his clothes, but gave him a coat of mud, with a severe bruising into the bargain. Nothing but their utter aversion to making any disturbance prevented his being tarred and feathered. So tarred and feathered means tar is like concrete or like cement, and they used to put that on someone and then cover them with feathers as a punishment if you did something really bad. Okay, so I would encourage you once again to go back through that passage, and now that we've kind of worked through some of those tough words and stuff, reread it yourself so that you can better your comprehension, okay? Thanks, guys.